All-Australian amateur, absolute champion of the game, Bill Botten. I'm going to hand over to Luke Hosey to hit us with where are they now?
Hello, how are you, Bill?
And,
absolutely fantastic to have Bill in with us.
I'm well, Luke, and it's terrific to come down to 7 Foot. It really is, but I was expecting this to be a smallish community radio station, but you clearly have a big budget if you can afford Greenie on board, because I know he doesn't go anywhere other than for the big bucks.
Yeah, it's all the assistance we get from the animal.
Free food, he likes free food as well.
Yeah, if anyone out there who doesn't know, I mean, Bill, we've had football royalty this year with your Jarmans and your Andersons and the like, but in Amber League football there's no bigger name than Bill, and 4 times an All-Australian, so more All-Australian blazers than any other person. 15 state appearances, captain in a carnival on one other occasion. St Peter's Old Collegians, unbelievably 8 best and fairest out there. 8 best and fairest, and 3 association Div 2 medals.
All in 6 years.
And I know, around Riverside during the 80s it was a case of, stop Bill Botten and you stop Spock, and neither happened really. I mean, no one could ever stop Bill, and he was just a champion, and no bigger name in Amber League footy.
Kind words. I think you just copied what I wrote down. It doesn't necessarily mean any of that's true, but you mentioned Rivies, and you most certainly stopped us every time. But
Sleepy would have.
Yeah, Sleepy would have, or Willow, or a whole bunch of them. But well, this is a where are they now? So I can tell old stories, I suppose. But I used to love playing. I really loved playing down at Riverside, and even though we would, they would certainly give us a stick, and they'd probably know that a lot of us are out of our comfort zone, having actually have to go past the cemetery on Port Road. But I would always make a point of sticking around after and having a beer, because it was I don't know, Portland no doubt is now, but I know that back then when it was Riverside, they were just a really good club, and it was seriously fierce on the ground. But I reckon, I think it always occurred to me that Sleepy and Air actually did a pretty good job of pulling together a hell of a lot of talent, a whole lot of different personalities in that Riverside team. But he had you functioning as a unit, and I'd get a free beer from him whenever they knocked us off there, which was every time, so it worked. There are some upsides to losing.
No better coach than Sleepy, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, I played under him in state footy as well. In fact, I remember one year arriving at training as it happened at Kilburn Oval the Thursday night before we were to play, I don't know, Victoria or WA, and Sleepy sat us all down and went through a running sheet telling us when each person was on and off the ground and moving. And I remembered I was to start on the ground, and he was bloody taking me off after 3 minutes, and I went home, and I love Sleepy, but I really bad-mouthed him. I didn't like the thought of being taken off at all, and I thought, what is he doing? And of course, it's exactly what the AFL is now. Yeah. And he was ahead of himself. So, Sleepy, if you're listening, I apologise for the serious bad-mouthing I did of you that night.
Oh, don't worry. When he first arrived at Riverside, we couldn't work it out either, and it soon became apparent exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
You're right, he was 10 years in front of his time.
Yeah, he sure was.
Other district clubs, I know that you played against Kilburn and Port Districts and those sorts of things. A couple of stories there from Port Districts or Kilburn?
Yeah, sure. Both, I mentioned with Riverside, like after the game and having a beer there. I didn't do that with every club, but I used to try and make a point of doing that. Went away, and I recall one time at Port Districts, of course, playing just down the road from here, and we went down there and we knocked off Port Districts, and I stuck around to have a couple of beers after the game, and I was sort of generally welcomed, and was having a few beers, and the meat tray raffle tickets came along, and there were 2 meat trays, and I bought 2 tickets, and I think you probably know what's going to happen here.
No.
Well, I won the first meat tray, and we'd won, and I was there drinking their beer, and I'd won their bloody 2 chooks and a bottle of summer wine, and that was seen as a bit of fun. And then they drew the second one. I won that as well. So I won both their meat trays. With 2 tickets, I think I spent 40 cents.
Jeez,
and had taken the premiership points, and I quickly hopped on my horse and rode away.
So you got away with the car?
I got away with it just.
The wheels were on.
And at Kilburn too, I remember sticking around, and I was one time offered, offered over the loudspeaker. They said they were offering me $300 a game and all the criminal legal work I could ever possibly want.
That would have been Occo, would it?
I think it might have been, yeah.
I can just sense that would have been Occo trying to get you to Kilburn.
So anyway, that was fun, yeah.
I mentioned interstate games, you played so many. Any great memories from the interstate games?
Well, one thing, if I was asked to prove that I played state or Australian games by showing my Guernsey, so I wouldn't be able to do it. After I'd retired, my former coach, his line rang me asking if he could borrow one of my old Australian Guernseys, because he somehow thought that would impress the team he was coaching up at Strathalbyn at practice. I said sure, and I went to the draw road, kept all the state Guernseys, and you swap them, so Victorian, Tasmanian, WA, all of those, 4 Australian Guernseys, and there was nothing there. And I asked my wife if she knew anything about it, and she said, yeah, they're all with Goodwill. Well, they were. I took them down there a long while ago. I said, what?
Divorce.
We are now divorced too. Very cool. In fairness to her, I think she just had no understanding of football. She was Russian. She just didn't. She had no idea. So I don't think she was doing. I don't think she was doing it out of spite. But she said, "You're always nagging at me that I clutter things up and keep too much." So I had a big clean out. So I can only imagine. In various African nations as we speak, there are the kids wandering around in all Australian Amateur League Guernseys. So good on them if that's what's happened. But sorry, your question was more. Yeah, no, I played a lot of state footy, and it was. I'm sure others that you asked would give the same response. It was terrific. It's really good. It also actually made your football life, better, because when you played other teams, invariably you'd know 1, 2, 3 or 4, and you would have been away, and it doesn't change the way you play your football, but it's nice, because there's not much point doing this if you're insular and just staying within your own club and so on. I think you're missing a lot of what it's about.
So you would have made lifelong friends with, say, a Ross Haslam at Scotch,
Ross,
or a Straub's Emil?
Both of those were a bit before my time. I'm only 28 now, still. But they were. I played against Ross. God, he was a hard footballer. I think he's a hard liquidator too. And so I did event against Ross, but that and Jeff Emil, of course, I know, but I think everyone knows Jeff.
Straub's.
Loads of it.
Yeah,
loads of them.
15 state games, that's a lot of players.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you love it. I think with state footy, I can tell you one story about an Australian game, because usually with us being in Australia and having no other country to compete against, usually, of course, you don't get to play a game, but I played a few. And one year it was against Vic Country, and we played at Bendigo, but we went over to Melbourne and were billeted out. And we had a whole week's training before we went to Bendigo. And our coach, he was just a bloody dreadful person. Luckily, I can't defame him because I can't even remember his name. But I know he was ex-Hawthorn, and he trained us into the ground. And amongst others from South Australia, there was Clinton Huey Giles and Peter Cousins. Now, they were, they had long, successful league careers, and they didn't require to be run into the ground. But he would do it to everyone. Anyway, we bowled up at Bendigo and played the game, and the coach, he went over on the other side of the oval with walkie-talkie and would direct a runner as to, making moves, pulling people on or off. And we didn't like him. At half time, he didn't address us. He gave a TV interview instead. And we had lined him all week. And then at some point in the third quarter, we had a bench of, we were allowed 5 interchange players for that game. And I forget who it was. I think it was Huey Giles was sitting on the bench next to him. He said, "You notice anything, Bill?" And I looked down, and there were 5 SA representatives in the All-Australian team, and all 5 of us were on the bench.
On the bench?
It was a mutual dislike. It didn't mean the week wasn't good. The week was good. In fact, the guys billeted with Archie Salak. We've been lifelong friends ever since then, and he was involved in another All-Australia moment. Archie played for old Melburnians and was, I'm told by all, was just a dreadful footballer. Luckily they had a D or E grade team, and he could fit into that. But Archie told me that when he got the club record, I think it was 354 games or something, and they all gave him a rev up in the rooms before he ran out. And as he ran out, there was a banner, and he saw the banner and he felt almost teared up that they would do this for him until he read it. It said, "Congratulations, Archie, on 354 shit games." And he said that he said quite rightly, I think, that how dare they assume that he was going to play a shit game. And he didn't let them down.
Obviously a great character of the game.
He is, and he bowled up. I was rooming with Simon Beasley in an All-Australian team for the Bicentennial Carnival, where half of our team were, I was going to say AFL, they were then VFL players who'd played amateurs. And I was rooming with Beasley and hotel we were on in South Terrace, and we bowled back to the hotel after training and went to the room. And there in the room was a cot stretcher bed with on the floor with a guy sleeping in it, and it turned out it was Archie, who was mates also with Simon Beasley. In fact, Simon Beasley took him out to Footscray then to help, and Archie's still there. He's a life member, and he's there every week and away. He's, and that's a lot of years ago, and he's sort of a, like clubs need. It's not just amateur clubs like AFL clubs. They need like a gopher, a guy who'll just do stuff and love being there, and bring a bit of a. They help bring a bit of glue to a club as well. And Archie's that. And when his mum died last year, they all wore black armbands for him. I mean, it's not just amateur clubs. That's wank. But I mean, the truth is, it's what you and I love about
that's
footy or whatever, isn't it? It's not just about playing. It's about helping, fitting in, barracking, and
camaraderie off the field.
So I know that's been said a million times before, and it sounds a bit cliche, but it's too true to not mention.
No, a little bit of a story about a hangover after training in Melbourne. You want to tell us a little bit about
that? You might. I don't know how many state games I have played. I think it might be 15, but it very nearly was cut short when we're in Melbourne. I think it was like a one-off game like that. You see, go there for 3 or 4 days and play the Vics. I beg your pardon, it wasn't. It was a carnival, so we were there for 10 days, and I was captain. So as a good captain, I just got on the grog the night before, way too much. We didn't have a game the next day. We only had training, but we did have a game the next day, and it's not the day after that. And it's, for a captain or anyone, it's probably a very poor example to set. So we had training early, and I actually just refused to get out of bed. And there was thumping on doors and all sorts of things. Eventually I did, and I was way behind the other players. They'd been out training for half an hour, and I staggered out onto the oval, and I could see them, the other end of the ground. I could see they were all called in once they saw me, including the coach, David Marsh. And I struggled up there, and I sort of said, "I'm sorry." And I was the spokesman for the team came out, Gary Parker, the late Gary Parker, and he said, "Bill, what you've done just sets a very poor example, and this is the start of Carnival. You're meant to be captain, for God's sake. And anyway, the guys and I have had a talk, and we've voted you off the team. We want you to go back to Adelaide now.
Oh, dear.
And Marshy's coach said, that's right, Bill, and let it be a lesson to you. And, you know, because I was hungover, I wasn't even attuned to whether... It didn't occur to me that this might be a joke. There was just this horrible silence. And then they all just started laughing.
That was the setup.
Yeah, thank God. I was just so... It was one of my worst moments ever. Probably did deserve to be sent home, but the fact that they put Gary Parker up to say that I should have twigged that something was up, because he was a mischievous bugger, wasn't he?
Yes, he certainly was. The great late Gary Parker.
Yeah, he was a terrific guy. I went away with him a lot. I really liked him. He had a wonderfully wicked sense of humour too.
Yeah.
And you know, he very much liked the fact that he looked like a Hollywood idol, and he wasn't. He was just happy to let you know about that.
Yeah. I remember Gary was at Port District, and wonderful player, and great character. Best speech you've ever heard?
Oh, well, I didn't hear it. It's the best speech I've ever heard. I mean, this was brought to my mind because we're at that end of the season, the end of the minor round, or I know with Div 2 below that just finished. But anyway, we're at that time, and I was told once of a Prince Alfred Old Collegians team, again, whatever their bottom team was, so it was the D's, and this occurred, I'm told, in the 70s or 80s, where they were coached by a bloke named Jack Richards, and it was the last minor round game, and they'd lost all 17, and somehow at three-quarter time, as the players came in, they found themselves a couple of goals up, and he made what I'm told was a stirring speech, and firstly attacking his players, telling them that this was a game they just could not afford to win, and he sent them out saying, we must go through the season defeated. And they went out and got the job done. They lost, and they had a completely defeated season, which touchingly is what their coach had wanted.
That's phenomenal, isn't it? Best Emily players you've ever seen?
I think I heard Jeff Emmel interviewed, and when you asked him that, you know, I was just hoping Jeff would mention my name, but he didn't even think of my name. He instead gave what I think is the absolutely correct answer. In my book, anyway, it's Andy Obst.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
I think Kevin Aystrope might come in second to that. I mean, Ace could be a little bit inconsistent, but when he wasn't being inconsistent, he was saying, you know, sometimes there are players where you sort of know no one can do anything to stop them if they are in flight. But yeah, no, Andy Obst, I remember playing him, obviously he was at West Croydon. I heard that his father deliberately held him back from league a bit because he thought he might want to mature. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I'd see him, and not just me, and we'd all think, why isn't he? What's he doing? Why do we deserve to have to put up with this bloody player playing us? Because he shouldn't even be here. And then he went to Ports, and pretty quickly after that he went to Melbourne, didn't he? I mean, he had a long, distinguished career.
Oh, great career.
And I got to play with him in some state and All-Australian games. Two All-Australian games. And I was playing up forward, and it was just a pleasure when Andy would get the ball. And all he had to do was lead. I mean, God, if only football was that easy. The whole time, people thumping you on your chest. It was a pleasure.
Anything else? It's been great to have you in this morning. Is there anything else you'd like to just quickly go over?
I think it's just important to know that in a grand final playing centre, I kicked 8 goals.
In the centre?
Yeah, that's right. I just don't like to ever, no matter who I meet, no matter if they don't speak English, I always like to let them know that.
Just got to widen the doorway. It'd be great we can have that today from where we're playing. So on our side, not the opposition. So
good luck too with Portland's today.
Oh yes.
And also I've got to say Glenunga and Kenilworth. That game, I like both those clubs, but for John Schultz, I hope Kenilworth's get up.
Yeah, so do I.
Green.
Well, to everyone out there, it's been an absolute pleasure to have one of the great legends of Emily football and Bill Botten this morning. So thank you very much,
Thanks
Bill.
a lot, Luke.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.